Hello! This is my final speech for the 2020 summer semester speech class that I have taken that has unfortunately coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic. I've been alone in my apartment for quite some time now, and I was already talking to my webcam for hours at a time just out of desperation and loneliness, but now I get to do it for a grade, and I actually learned quite a bit in this class, and I'm very grateful for having taken it. Um, so for this speech, I'm going to give you a general overview of this course and teach you how to give at least a decent speech. My visual aids are going to include the various methods of escape that I have employed during this pandemic, and honestly, it's mostly memes. Let me know if we have any mutual fandoms, please. So first of all, communication is vital. It's the only way that anybody gets anything done. All we do, even at work for me right now, since I'm just work from home, all we do is talk, and that's how we get things accomplished. There are four principles of communication. Essentially, we cannot not communicate. We are always talking, even when we're not saying anything through nonverbal communication. Communication, as long as it's not on something that's edited like this, is irreversible. I can't unsay something to you after I've spoken. It's a continued process. You are constantly communicating. And finally, it involves ethics. There are good ways of communicating and bad ways. As universal communicators, we really need to be cognizant of the relationship of facts and inference. So a fact would be the sky is blue. It is an observable, provable phenomenon. An inference would be, it's a beautiful day because the sky is blue. But depending on who you are, you could like rainy days. And you think, ugh, another blue sky day, woo! One way to assure that you know what somebody means when you are communicating and to hopefully help avoid some conflict is to perform a perception check process. So you're double checking your inferences that you draw from someone else's observation. Inferences are, again, inevitable. All we do is interpret what each other says. Provide an objective description of what they said. Interrupt and discuss what the situation meant to you. And maybe ask a question to clarify. Since we're not around each other as much these days, it is very tempting to just run with things and get off the phone quickly, but it really does, at least in my professional life, it does help me to clarify since I don't have those nonverbal cues that I used to. So language is another aspect of communication. All we do is talk, as I've said previously, but language is the word aspect. Language means different things to different people. It can also be incredibly ambiguous. Words are symbols for everything. If I talk to you about bread, you're thinking about bread in your head. One of my favorite jokes of all time was about a symbol, and it was from a Muppet movie, ironically. And a French toast was called the Joan of Arc, and Rizzo the Rat said that in a kitchen setting, and I have never forgotten it because I think it's my favorite joke of all time. The symbols that we attribute to certain ideas and aspects are very important to how we feel about them. For example, a lot of people are stress shopping right now, and on one hand, you could look at it like you're treating yourself, but on the other hand, you could be a shopaholic. It depends on your outlook. Nonverbal communication is something that I think that we're all really missing out on right now. So kinesthetics, very important. Eye contact, gestures, and facial expressions are very important. So much of our communication is done non-verbally. For example, I'm very animated right now. I'm happy to be here. I'm very animated right now. I'm happy to be here. See? Complete different vibe. Artifacts are also other nonverbal ways that we communicate. They can range from personal to physical. For example, on myself, personally, you can tell I really like the 70s and Mick Jagger because of my shag hairstyle. It's messy even when it's neat. And a physical example is this bottle that I keep around. It's Prosecco, so you know that I'm pretentious, but it's La Marca Prosecco, so you know that I'm broke. Interpersonal communication has been very affected by COVID. Most of our communications happen now online, whether romantic, professional, personal, friends. Everything happens on the internet now, at least for me. I live alone. And it is a little bit harder not to have somebody physically there with you, or physically in the room with you, or to be able to catch onto somebody's hints and goals that they're dropping. It's difficult. So I've had to really focus on how I listen, and I have tried to become a more actively engaged listener. So I try to repeat things that people say back to me, and I really think about things before I respond, because we're all really stressed. Also, when I listen to the news, which is information, I try to critically analyze what I'm hearing and make sure that it's coming from a good, reputable source, and that I don't take things too hard. Conflicts have arisen now more than normal because we're all under a lot of stress right now. So when I do handle conflict nowadays, I try to come at it from an I perspective and not a you perspective. I have noticed this. I feel this way about the situation. Just be tactful. Everybody's really stressed right now. Conflict is inevitable, especially with people you care about. I really recommend learning your conflict style. I tend to be avoidant unless I'm close to the person that I'm debating with. Then I'm actually a little bit demanding. So when it comes to doing professional speeches like this, you need to figure out what your purpose is, whether you're informing, persuading, or entertaining. Hopefully I'm doing all three of those. Fingers crossed. And you want to make sure that your audience is amenable to what you're actually saying, so you're not wasting your time. When it comes to actually constructing a speech, you need a thesis statement, so you know what you want to say, an intro, a body with points that are backed up by facts that you've researched, and then you want to close out your speech just by reiterating everything you've already said. When it does come time to give a speech, you need to practice at least 2 to 4 times. Visual aids, I love them, and they break up the monotony of a speech. Visuals. Perfect. They're my favorite part of doing this at all, actually. When it comes to persuading people, which I've had to do in my professional life rather recently, you want to inform them, and then you want to help them make inferences about what you've told them about. One of my favorites is an argument that I get into in my personal life about Kylo Ren. He's a villain because he was written as a narrative foil to the hero of Star Wars, Rey. But in my opinion, he is not a redeemable villain because he killed my favorite character, Han Solo. I'm not over it. It's been like 6 years now. I don't think I'll ever get over it. When it does come time to give a speech, you can't expect yourself to be Abraham Lincoln or Martin Luther King, but you can be convincing by being sincere, starting small, talking about something you care about, making your points easy to understand. Speak to people who maybe are not as eloquent as you. The more rare your subject matter is, the better, and you want to be able to enact positive change. Interviews are a way that we do public speaking that have higher stakes than normal. So before you do one, you want to do your research. You want to make sure that you are prepared to deal with whatever company or person that you're dealing with, and you want to dress properly. Not like I did some days on work from home. I've been so many characters because I'm not seeing anybody. My most recent one is one of my favorites, and that was Romeo from Romeo and Juliet by Baz Luhrmann. And finally, teamwork is still happening despite COVID. Sometimes they're terrible, sometimes they're amazing. They can be both. One of my favorites example is The Gang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I've been binging. Or a better example would be my D&D group from better days back when we were actually allowed to get together. Leaders can take on different roles in these settings. The best sort of leader is one who can perform all 3 different leadership functions, which are laissez-faire, democratic, and autocratic. and authoritarian, and it just really depends on the context. My barbarian is only really good in action settings, and she's the last person you should call to negotiate unless you'd like to see some heads roll. In conclusion, communication is difficult and it's a constant learning process. I feel like I've learned a lot through this class, but I also feel like I have a lot of room for improvement. And especially just in general, not even including COVID, the most important thing any of us can do is to keep moving forward and to keep relying on each other. Because at the end of the day, communication is a constantly evolving process, and it's okay to make mistakes. And I've made so many. I hope you learned a little bit about this course today, and I'd like to thank you for listening. Thanks!